Hey everyone, it's Mike Andes. I'm the founder of lawncarebusinessforsale.com, a free tool for lawn care and landscapers to be able to sell their business. There is no charge, it's completely free. I hope you use it as a tool. But today I want to talk about buying and selling your business and the factors that go into that. Now, I'm not going to go super deep, and I don't have any notes right now. I'm literally just going off the top of my head because I want to make it as simple as possible for you to understand. And at the end of this video, there's a couple-hour webinar that's going to break down different mechanisms for valuation. So that one will be much more in the weeds, and you can, if you're a numbers nerd, you'll enjoy that. Right now, I want to break down some things that make a lot of sense to me when it comes to acquisitions and buying and selling, landscaping, lawn care business, and really any home service business. Honestly, even the gym that I purchased, I use these frameworks in terms of determining a value. Now, this works for if you're a seller or if you're a buyer. Because if you're a seller, you've got to optimize for the things I'm going to talk about today. If you are a buyer, you want to look at these three things when you're potentially looking at an acquisition, and you're going to try to whittle down the owner on these key aspects. So there's really three parts that will go into evaluation. And again, much more complicated mechanisms I talk about in the webinar. It's going to be at the end of this video. But the first one is assets, all right? These are the things that have ideally been paid off, and these are trucks, equipment, mowers, trimmers, blowers, etc. Unfortunately, most businesses, because they don't run on systems, they are going to be worth basically just their asset value. And that is, what is the cost to replace them or to buy them new? Again, this is another thing you're going to want to think about if you are a potential buyer. If someone is valuing all of their equipment and their assets at what is the cost to replace, very different than the cost that they would be if they were to sell them today. Because the cost to replace a new mower or a mower might be $10,000, but if they were to go sell that mower right now, it's probably only worth $5,000 because it's used. So again, two different ways of just valuing the assets inside the business. But this is something that's very important, because ideally, if you can buy a business for pennies on the dollar, usually that means you are getting things for the cost of less than what the assets are currently worth. And if you can buy a business that is just at the asset value, you essentially get all the contacts, the leads, the name, the website, the phone number. That's all free. So in a distressed sale, that's when typically you're going to get that type of a purchase, is the purchase price being relatively close to the asset price, where you can literally just like sell all the assets and recoup all your money back. That's kind of cool. But there's other things that go into the valuation of business, and this is where it gets murky, because a lot of us could agree upon the value of assets, whether that be what they were purchased at, brand new, and the replacement value, or if you were to go sell it today, what the value is it's used equipment, right? Most of us can agree on that. It's not too difficult. You can look at Kelley Blue Book for the trucks. You can usually eyeball a lot of the equipment based upon its usage, how many hours are on that piece of equipment. You can ask a dealer for mowers and things like that. Assets are easy. Let's talk about some things that are not so easy to quantify. This one's the one that contracts, and contacts, okay? Contacts. This is the intangibles. These are the part where everyone starts to have a different varying opinion on the valuation of a business. Now, if you are a buyer, this is the part where you're going to have typically the biggest delta, the difference in opinions of the buyer and the seller, is what the contracts and contacts are worth. The contracts are things that have recurring revenue in place, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to have a signed contract, because that signed contract, a lot of times, a customer can get out of relatively easily, especially when the change of ownership is being moved, or if you're starting a new LLC, all the rest of it. So a signed contract, not what I'm really talking about. I'm talking about recurring revenue. What is the recurring revenue on, what percentage of the revenue is recurring? This is why recurring based businesses typically sell better, is because they have more contracts. They have more recurring revenue. And so when that acquisition happens, there's a certain amount of track record that you can look at as a buyer and be like, oh, I expect that, okay, the last 5 months we've been at $18,000, $20,000, $22,000, and $24,000 in monthly recurring revenue. I expect at least there to be $20,000 continuing forward on monthly revenue. Whereas if you don't have any contracts and you just have one-time projects, you don't have any guarantee or any sort of promise of any recurring revenue, and leads could dry up. Now that leads me to contacts, because we got our contracts and our recurring revenue, but contacts are also very valuable. If a company's been in business for 10, 15 years, they literally might have thousands of email addresses, phone numbers, and contacts inside their CRM that have not been utilized. If you have a better marketing mechanism and a better way to keep those leads warm and remarket and retarget these contacts, they actually might be a lot of value to you. Because at some point over the past 5, 10 years, whatever it might be, even 2 or 3, depending on the size of the business, they have at one point needed your services and that company that you're trying to buy. And so those contacts are worth something, especially if they've been kept warm, especially if the business owner has stayed in touch with them, made sure that there's still a brand affinity. There is now value inside of the contacts. If you can increase the level of advertising and marketing acumen and make sure you actually farm those leads that are just sitting idle inside their CRM. There is some value to that. Unfortunately, most sellers are going to overemphasize the value of this, and they're gonna put this massive number on this. They're gonna look at their contracts and contacts and be like, yeah, it's doing $30,000 a month we did last month, and last year we did $250,000 in monthly revenue. We're gonna charge $200,000. It's incredibly stupid, it's ridiculous. Here's what you wanna do. In my mind, you wanna take your contracts, you wanna look at what is the revenue per month of recurring revenue, and then you can multiply that by approximately what you expect to be the profit margin. Let's just call it 0.2 or 20%. So let's just say if there was $20,000 in monthly revenue and we expect there to be a 20% margin, that means that there's going to be a $4,000 worth of profit on those recurring contracts or that recurring revenue. So I expect that if I buy this business, I'm immediately gonna be making $4,000 in profit. Let's just assume for the sake of this example that there's gonna be 10 months of mowing for the year and 10 months that these contracts are going to be active. I can then assume $40,000 worth of profit. And this is where people start to say, oh, well, I'm gonna take the profit of my business, multiply it by 3. So multiply this by 3, so it'd be 120K plus the asset value that we talked about up top. And so a lot of people will use this as a way to come up with a valuation if they are a seller. Again, at the end of this video, I break down several other ways to do valuations and not just use assets plus 3 times profit. It doesn't make sense. A lot of times your profit, your multiple there is gonna depend on what type of services you have and what size you are and a whole bunch of other things. The most important and most promising and mostly commonly used way of valuing recurring contracts is simply to say, okay, what is my customer acquisition cost? i.e., how much would I have to spend to go out and buy these customers by spending money on marketing? And then what am I then spending per paying customer currently in the acquisition? So if I'm spending $100 to go buy a new customer using my advertising, my marketing, why would I spend $500 or $600 per contract or per recurring customer that's coming across from this new acquisition that I have no guarantee I'm gonna keep them, and the pricing might be off and they might leave anyways? So these are some things to think about, and again, the video at the end is gonna talk more about that. Now, another thing that is gonna be brought into account is systems and training. Okay, so systems are going to be, training. Okay, so systems are going to be, okay, can the business run without the owner? This is the biggest determining factor of what the multiple is on your profit. Okay, so over here we use like the 3 times multiple. That could be a 0 if you as the business owner have to be there all the time. You're out doing all the work, you're doing the estimates, you're doing everything in the business. You don't have a business to sell. There's nothing you're selling. You're simply selling your equipment, and maybe you'll get $100 or $200 per contract if you're lucky. Okay. If you are trying to sell a business and you're really trying to have a good valuation, you're gonna need systems in place to be able to replace you as the owner so that when you sell the business, you aren't selling a job. You are selling a business and a system that works, makes profit, and works without you as the owner. You are not selling someone like, hey, yeah, here's this business and you're gonna have to work in it 50 to 60 hours a week and do all the estimates and all the hiring, and actually you're gonna have to work a couple days a week. And like, if you do that, your valuation is way lower, way lower. And for the vast majority of businesses in our industry that are doing under 500,000 in annual revenue, they will be simply judged on their asset value plus a simple, dollar per customer that they'll give for a contract or a recurring customer simply because there are no systems in place. That same business doing $500,000 in revenue, but having a manager in place, all their back end being completely systematized and automated, literally might get this 3 times multiple of profit simply because the business runs without the owner, and therefore when the business is sold, the new owner expects the business to be able to run efficiently and profitably without them having to revamp and change. Because if you're gonna have to jump in and do a job, it's not worth much. And if you have to jump in and change things and renovate and there's big problems, there's no value to the business. You should just, as a buyer, go out and do marketing and get the customers brand new. All right, so the only advantage to buying these contracts, buying these contacts, is you save time, you're able to grow faster, especially if you're paying a premium on top of what you would otherwise be spending on marketing, customer acquisition costs, to just go out and spend on ads and get new customers yourself. But you're able to save a lot of time by just doing an acquisition, and there is sometimes a premium on top of your customer acquisition costs that you are willing to spend. So that's systems, extremely important, probably the biggest reason why I would say 80 to 90% of lawn care businesses should be simply sold based on assets plus a certain dollar amount on their contracts. That's the reason. That is the number one thing, and if you're trying to optimize your sale, your business, focus on that. Next thing is training. Is the owner going to stick around and train the new owner for any given period of time, a week, 2 weeks, whatever it might be? If that is involved, that's definitely gonna add some value to the acquisition because it shows that they are gonna have some skin in the game. They're not just gonna like drop things and run. Does the money actually come out after they train and get the new owner onboarded and ready to roll? All very important. All right, so when I look at any sort of acquisition, I'm looking at what the assets are. And this is the thing, if you're trying to buy something for pennies on the dollar, try to get rid of this one. Try to just buy this, okay? Because part of the systems, the training, etc., the only thing we haven't talked about is brand awareness. And this is what everyone tries to sell. This is the intangibles. This is the possibilities, the future. And this is usually what people will put massive value on in their business when it's really not worth anything. Because they'll say, hey, it comes with a website and a phone number and everyone knows our brand in the local community. But if you're doing 150, 200, 500,000 in revenue and you're in a city of 3 million people, no one knows really who you are. You are still doing mostly direct marketing and you don't have tons of word of mouth. It's not like you're massive, okay? You have not achieved economies of scale. And so you don't have a brand. You don't not everyone in your city knows you. You think that, but trust me, if you're doing under 500,000 in revenue and you live in a city that has more than 500,000 people, you don't have brand awareness. You have pockets of people that might know who you are and you might get some referrals, but branding and the possibility of what's to come in the future is only valuable if it's bringing new leads. So the only thing that you might look at, in addition to the assets, the contracts, the systems, and the training that you're gonna get, is the fact of leads. And this is what people are going to sell you based upon their brand and what the future is going to hold and how the possibilities and what this business can become. Look, the only thing I care about is lead flow. So the thing that might hold some value here, if you're trying to keep the brand and actually keep the same name and likeness of the old owner, if you're trying to do that, what you might want to look at is like, okay, I want to see how many leads came in from the website. I want to see all the estimate request forms, and I want to see exactly how many people came through that website and gave me a new lead. Because look, if someone is generating 50 new leads a month through their website, that website has some value because if my lead acquisition cost is $50 and they're getting 50 a month, technically that's worth $2,500 to me as the new owner. That's valuable. I might want to make sure I have that if that website, that machine is actually creating some brand where leads are coming in. So this is another thing, if you as a seller are trying to optimize your sale, make sure you have a great website that's churning a whole bunch of new leads, because that lead engine, if you're getting 50, 60, 70, 100, 200, 300 leads a month, you can really create more value for your business, because when someone buys your brand, they're actually buying something that's generating leads. They're not just buying like, oh yeah, like everyone knows who I am. Well, if their website is not producing, 1 or 2 leads a month, I'm sorry, there's no brand, no one's trying to find them, there's not a lot of word of mouth going on, and you're not buying anything. If you're trying to be a buyer and you're trying to optimize, you're literally going to try to buy just this, because people are always going to inflate their assets. They're going to inflate how well their business is ran on systems when most people are not, and they're going to inflate their brand. Okay, they're going to say everyone knows them. The future is bright. You get all these leads and all. If you want to get things for pennies on the dollar, and the best acquisitions that I have made is when I come out and I buy, hey, look, I don't want your assets. Go sell them on Craigslist or Facebook. Sell them someplace else. I don't want to even keep your brand. I'm going to literally change them over to my brand. But I will buy the contacts and the contracts inside your database, and I'll take the recurring revenue and I'll try to move as many as I possibly can using the same pricing into my model. And we'll do a video together, and you'll say that you have now sold the business to me, and I'm going to take over their contract, I'm going to take over their mowing service, I'm going to take over the recurring maintenance program, and I'm going to try to retain as much of that, and I'll give you a certain amount of dollars per contact, per contract. I'll do that. That's going to be your best as a buyer. As a seller, the best way that you can optimize your price is make sure you have these things. Make sure your assets are in good quality, good shape, well maintained. Make sure you have good systems in place that don't require you as the owner to always be there. Make sure you have the ability to have SOPs, standard operating procedures, have a place where ideally you send them for training if you're part of a franchise, or B, you have a system in place and you have a manual ways of doing things and systems. And then 4, if you actually have leads coming from your website, right? So at lawncarewebdesign.com, we build websites all the time. I know how many, on average, people get in terms of leads from their website. And if they're only getting 2 or 3 or 4, they do not have a brand. If they're getting 60, 70, 100 plus leads from their website every single month, there's real value to your brand. So you want to build that out. Build out the website, build out there's always these leads coming in. That stream of leads is consistent. That is what is going to offer a lot more value when you tell a prospective buyer you have brand. And why do you think that the future is going to be so bright? Why do you think that they have so much more opportunity to grow the business? You should only be able to stand on the feet of what your brand and the lead flow is coming from your website and people contacting you because of the brand. There is no brand if you're not getting leads organically without paying for the leads. All right, that's when you have real brand awareness, is when you're getting leads without spending money on marketing and ads. So I hope that was helpful. At the end of this video, you're going to see a video pop up somewhere on the screen. It's a much longer webinar breaking down ways of valuation, but I hope that gives you a starting point of what you should be looking at as a buyer. There's a whole bunch of questions you could ask, and we'll make more in-depth video in the future of what you should ask as a buyer, but this is what almost all of it will center around. Assets, are they worth anything? 2, your contacts and your contracts. 3, your systems and your training. And 4, your brand, the future, and what your lead flow is. I hope that was helpful. I'm Mike Andes, lawncarebusinessforsale.com. Enjoy the free tool. I appreciate you all so much.